Tonight, we take a look at the Boon to Eve Classic, which is about to kick off. We take a look at who the newest and up-and-coming racers are, and what the racing vets think about the fresh blood on the track.
And the dangers of spaceflight. We continue our 4-part series with an expose on vacuum-breathing life forms. All that and more at 11. Welcome back, smugglers and scoundrels, to another episode of Hoth Topics, a Star Wars podcast. I am your navigational droid, Ian. Joining me this week is Imperial Patrol Trooper Jon and our resident Cloud Rider, Mike. Welcome back, gentlemen. I'm going to pretend like we did not just have an entire conversation about this not like 20 minutes ago.
Okay.
So, continuing on from that thought, we just talked about Solo, a Star Wars story, but there was so much to say about it, we did not get all the way through it. So what I think we should be doing is picking back up where we left off. The last thing we talked about, and we're speed right into this. Gonna light speed right into this.
I'm judging you for that.
With your hyperdrives and your
They expect quality
hyperfuel
puns from us, Ian. Quality puns.
They expect quality puns from you. They expect just garbage
just
from
volume.
Me. Garbage and yelling. That's me. When we left off last time, we had just kind of finished our introduction to Lando Calrissian and L3, whom they had the crew consisting of Kira, Han, Chewbacca, Tobias Beckett, had convinced to take them to Kessel in order to get unrefined hyperfuel from underneath the spice mines of Kessel and get it to a refinery so that they won't get kill-deaded by one of the bosses of the...
I'm going to shake my head.
Crimson
Sun.
Lance.
Dawn. Eclipse?
No, that was the name of Sluice Quasar Blast ship in our Star Wars
That's
game.
why I keep messing up. So, Crimson Dawn.
Nailed it. We got there.
Yeah, I had to go through Sluice Quasar Blast first.
Most people do.
And then he shoots them from behind.
Yeah, because that's how heroes are born.
Was there anything you guys wanted to add to what we last talked about before I get to the actual on-planet discussion?
There were some very significant things that happened on the ship that we should talk about before we go to the planet.
That is very true.
So maybe we should start there.
So, for example, I think you're talking about some of the interpersonal relationship developments.
Yeah, because Han and Kira got all makey-outy on the ship.
Yep, doing it in a closet of capes.
Right. Custom capes.
Custom capes. Well, I'm sure not all of them were custom.
I thoroughly enjoyed those parts because the young child next to me kept going oh, they're kissing again, throwing his arms up in disgust. It made those scenes so much better.
Good.
I heard him towards
he was wearing,
the end.
9 metal bracelets, rattled every time he shifted.
That's what that noise was?
Every time he shifted, yeah.
I thought somebody was throwing keys.
He might have.
You get a little bit more development with the relationship between Kira and Han, and we get to see a lot of Kira's reservations about just being here on this job and seeing him, because it's very clear that she wants to be with Han, but her dedication to Dryden Voss is even more intense. So it really makes you wonder what happened while she was still on Corellia, and how bad did it get when Dryden got her out of that life. So
You didn't get her out of that life. She's still in it.
right. I think I was more referring to whatever her situation is that she was in before meeting Dryden. So what did you guys feel about that whole...
It felt pretty par for the course for a gangster movie. I think.
Oh, okay, that's actually a really good point.
Very common trope of somebody has feelings for somebody within an organization, and then that person is to figure out their conflicted feelings between, do they stay loyal to their crime family or do they stay loyal to the ones that they care about?
Okay, yeah.
I've played a lot of video games.
Well, that's a really good
thing.
point, though, because I hadn't been looking at it through that lens, that gangster crime lens, and maybe I should have. So little hints of other genres making it through, as is the case with a lot of Star Wars history. But
I think it was good to establish that still, like, more than 3 years has passed, and we see stuff about what Hans went through, but we don't. We look at Kira, and she looks the same outside of the tattoo that she has on her arm when we meet up with her again. So we don't really know what kind of life she's lived, and I think it's important to establish that she's not the same character that we saw earlier. Went through different things. She has more life experience and more understanding about the inner workings of this organization that she's involved with, and more of basically a criminal in this world. So I think it was good to establish that that conflict is there, but she's a lot smarter about it than just like some trope female that's in love with some guy.
That's true. She does for a romantic subplot. There is a lot of balance in that dynamic there, which is really good to see. Mm-hmm. It's well represented and it's realistic.
I'm pretty sure it's not a tattoo. I think it's a brand. Like,
oh, okay.
It's about the same size as Dryden's ring, and I know people that have brands, and that's what they kind of come out looking like after a couple of years.
Okay, that's fair enough. We get a little bit more development with Tobias Beckett's character here as well. He walks in and interrupts that meeting of the mouths. And he shows a lot of concern for his own well-being, and Han showing interest in Kira is putting that at risk and putting the job at risk. But I got the vibe that he was like legitimately looking out for Han, going, hey man, like you and me and Chewbacca, like we've got, he says straight up, it's like we've got the makings of a good crew.
Mm-hmm. She's not part of it.
And she's not part of it.
Right.
And he's like legitimately trying to say to him, dude, your girlfriend's done some stuff. You need to move on if you're going to succeed. He also has that conversation with Chewbacca about looking out for, people are predictable, think 5 steps ahead. It kind of develops this complex character that Tobias is. He's a really bad dude sometimes, but he has a heart of gold other times. But he can so easily shift between those positions, so you don't really like. I ended up really liking him as a character. He might be my vote for like most well developed in the movie.
I think I've watched too many gangster films. When the gangster mentor is usually giving advice, he's usually giving advice for something that he's going to do. Like he said, like people are predictable. And it's like, oh, I'm listening to what he's saying. Oh, that's because this is something that's going to happen
down the
40
line.
minutes from now. That's me.
So you've gone. You couldn't quite get out of the meta because of how many times you've seen the trope.
Anytime an ally says never trust anyone, that mentor that ally is usually the first one that turns their back on somebody.
Yeah, fair enough.
I've watched Indiana Jones.
Fair enough.
Quick side note, the guy who says that to Harrison Ford in Indiana Jones is the same guy that plays General Veers in Empire Strikes Back. So,
you know a lot about General Veers.
He's also Grandmaster Pycelle.
Yep.
Not the Mother of Dragons.
No. Mike, what were your feelings on the...
I thought it was just a pretty standard, hey, don't get distracted and do the job, because like this relationship and this love that you're feeling is going to be basically the ultimate distraction. Just like Ian's distracted right now with a fly in the
I was listening.
Room. Okay. But yeah, I thought it was just standard, hey, just don't screw this up because you're thinking about something else or what's in your pants, and just move forward with the job that we have at hand.
Let's use our upstairs brains.
Fair enough.
Jinx. Double jinx.
I don't think that...
You owe me like a...
What do we owe you, John?
Loath cat. Good luck.
I owe you a loath cat.
Yeah, no talking.
Not only do you owe him a loath cat, but you're not allowed to talk.
On the podcast.
That's how jinx works, right?
I think... No, I don't think it is. Secondly, in this scenario, we would both be trapped. So I say fight the system.
Fight the power. John's the power.
If I can find you a loaf cat, John, I will find you a loaf cat.
Getting back on track, I think one of my favorite scenes in this movie also happened on this ship, which was the dialogue between Kira and L3.
Yes.
Really establishing Lando's love for his droid.
Oh yes, his love for his droid.
Right. And how they were really just meant to be together, but they weren't compatible, and she didn't have the same feelings that he did.
But it does work.
It does work.
It does work.
I thought that was a really cool, like, hey, this is a really serious scene in this movie, but we're going to take it back a little bit, and we're going to give you a little bit of humor before we get into, like, the huge, like, story mission that we're about to go through.
Right. It was cool, too, because it really helped, we talked about it last time, developing L3 as a truly independent droid, which is something that we don't see a lot of, and that really helped get more of her character, show more of that independent spirit.
Yeah, we're used to seeing droids that may be free thinking, but their actions are always like set up by an order to do something. So you have K2SO who's like sassy, and he has a mind of his own, but as soon as Cassian tells him to do something, he does it. Where with L3, we have Lando will tell her to do something, and she will complain about it. Not just immediately do the thing.
She makes sure that he knows that she's doing it because she wants to do it. We move on from kind of that little bit of downtime. I like how you mentioned the brief moment of levity there. Not that there aren't more moments of levity going forward, but it is quite a serious mission, and we actually get to the spice mines of Kessel. Kira poses as she's pretending to be this big shot independent person with slaves who
the plan is for her to present herself as a bigwig of some sort.
Trade slaves for spice.
Yeah, start a dialogue with the Pike Syndicate about beginning a trade agreement over the spice that the Pikes are mining.
And she offers Han and Chewbacca, who have been put in chains, as a sample for the Pikes' consideration. Beckett comes in disguised as he has the same disguise on that Lando wears in Return of the Jedi to free Han. And he's their bodyguard. L3 acts as the translator, and Lando stays on the ship to complete his novels and his memoirs. And the plan is to have them break in. Han and Chewie go through the mines, get the hyperfuel, get it back to the ship, and they take off. So what about this the Kessel actual on-planet sequence did you guys enjoy?
I think L3 was the best part about it.
Absolutely.
There was some dialogue that Han dropped, some of the joke like gags they did. L3 accidentally starting a prison uprising because she just needed a droid to move out of the way for a second was probably the most entertaining thing that happened there.
The thing I like about that particular moment is L3 needs to get to a console. The droid in the way won't move because he has a restraining bolt on. And she just unlocks it. Now, she's been yelling about droids' rights and how barbaric people treat them. But as soon as she frees this guy, she's so blasé about him being released. It's just I don't know, just go free other droids if you want. Just move out of my way.
Yeah, it wasn't her intention to start a revolution.
But then it actually happened.
And it was a great part of that sequence.
Mm-hmm.
We also do get to see some Wookiees. Some other Wookiees.
Yeah. I would like to know what the thought process was behind having some of the Wookiees have shaved faces.
I think that has to do with when Han and Chewie were being presented as gifts, and the Pike says, "Let's get them
tagged and trimmed,
tagged and clipped."
Yeah.
It might have been something like a hygiene reason that they shave a Wookiee's face or something.
Sure.
Or maybe it's the costume department ran out of hair.
Yeah. It was definitely one of those things that kind of took me out of the moment. Because...
Alternatively, it could have been a thing where all the Wookiee costumes kind of look the same, and they wanted to be able to distinguish Chewbacca from the other captives.
Especially in that dark sort of...
Yeah,
I can think of a million reasons why it works, both story-wise and for behind-the-scenes reasons. It still was just one of those moments that took me out of the situation, because I was like, well, I know what Wookiees look like, and this does not look like a Wookiee. And I can rationalize that, but it was still, in the moment, just kind of like, what happened?
Yeah, I thought L3 was really the MVP, and just kind of like starting the uprising was a lot of fun. I think we see like Chewie's individualism in this portion of it, and I think that was really important, because throughout the entire thing we just saw him following Han and whatever he was doing. And
to be fair, that's all we see really in the original trilogy as well, totally. Up through The Force Awakens.
But like, he just met Han, and so yeah, they're a great team, and they've worked so great since they've met him. But it's been a couple days so far, or something like that. But it's good to see him. Chewie ultimately had a purpose. We saw earlier on in the movie that he wanted to find his family, and wanted to do that. So ultimately, when he sees another Wookiee, everything just kind of comes to a halt with him. And right. I thought that was really important, instead of just like, hey, just moving on and following Han, doing whatever he's doing, to establish that, this is a different character, and to develop him a little bit differently, because, this is a new team, basically, that we have with Han and Chewie. So giving him little individualism, having him dive off and then dive back in, I thought was a really cool idea.
Yeah, I agree with you there. One of the things I thought after the first viewing when I came out of the theater was there enough Chewbacca in this movie? And after seeing it a second time, I kind of my fears were eased a little bit more about that, because it's a 2.5-hour movie and they fit a lot of stuff in there. But that was kind of like one of my initial reactions, which makes that scene and just that development all the more important.
I didn't have any issues with how much Chewbacca was in it, and I think it's because I have a feeling that if they do go ahead and make more movies in this kind of timeline,
right,
I have a feeling that if we get another Solo movie, they might go the old Batman route, and then the next one will be like, Han and Chewie or something like that, and then we'll get more story on Chewie or something. But this movie was supposed to be just about Han. Well,
Fair.
It's supposed to emphasize Han more than it does Chewbacca.
Right, his name's on the title.
Yeah.
So that's a fair point. We get to see a Pike. People were really, really excited to see a Pike. I was like, cool. This is neat. It was definitely one of those moments that were for, like John, you recognizing the martial art name later down the line. Oh, it's actually in this scene, that in this sequence that she mentions it.
Yes.
She beats the crap out of the Pike.
So this was another like weird thing that happened a number of times in the movie.
Uh-huh.
Where somebody would do some sort of casual martial arts, and then other people would respond with, "That was the most amazing thing I ever saw."
Uh-huh.
Han did this earlier in the movie, and Beckett was like, "That was amazing," or whatever. Or maybe it was Rio. So somebody does something. And then this one, you see Kira flash her cape around a handful of times, and then she's pulling out what looks to be a vape out of the Pike's throat. And L3's like, that was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Like,
whoa.
That's okay. I mean, sure. We'll go with it. That's fine. It's fine.
I think it's kind of like one of those things where a lot of what they're used to in the underworld is just straight up like gunplay and brawling, So when someone comes in doing ninja high kicks.
Oh, what it was with Han is when he's piloting the AT hauler, and all he has done is not ram it into a wall as hard as it was going to without him piloting it, and then Rio says, "You are a great pilot."
Well, to be fair, Rio was really out of it and like super shot.
Just a little bit.
And I don't really think piloting a ship is really a martial art.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was comments made in the movie that tried to make mundane actions look extraordinary.
I know a few maneuvers. List slightly to the left.
Leftish.
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 Technical terms. It's all we use here.
I mean, it was great. And then I got to watch Tobias shoot people and spin guns again, so I enjoyed that part.
He's... Like, I don't know what it is about Tobias, but, like, normally...
He's human Cad Bane.
when I see like the excessive gun spinning and everything, I'm just like, you're just trying to be cool. But in this case, it really worked.
You know what it really reminds me of, Ian, is the bounty or the scoundrel bounty hunter class from Old Republic games.
Oh yeah, when you do the
guy
flourish.
that's in the cinematic that looks like it's High Noon.
McCree
Looks like McCree, except space. That's what he reminds me of.
Yeah, no, I can see that. That's pretty cool.
Space McCree.
Yeah.
Space McCree.
It's Galactic Noon. Is that
Galactic
is that
Standard
right? I don't
Noon.
play Overwatch.
Find a wall.
So one thing I didn't like about the scenes on Kessel, honestly, was like how easily they took everything over. They just like kicked a few people and then turned all the droids on everybody and it was over. Like that was a seriously like super easy takeover of this place that they were at.
Yeah, I think they tried to put a Band-Aid on that in the script, because there's a point where as they're walking in through the area, the Pike is like explaining to them like, oh, we can control so many people with so few people because we control everything from this little area. And it's like, okay, fair enough, but I see what you're saying.
I think it was something to kind of show the arrogance of the crime syndicate, that they think that they can control so many people with one small action. All of their control is smashed in the face with some shovels.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense, but as like a moviegoer in a 2.5 hour movie, when it took that quickly, I just thought that was like, hey, it's super convenient that we're able to get through this really quickly.
Going back to the martial arts comment, we get to see some Wookiee wrestling going on here.
My neck still hurts.
Yeah, where he what's the proper wrestling term?
One-handed inverted choke slam.
Rocked him on his head.
Yeah, directly, like his head disappears into body.
Like he's dead.
Yeah.
Or
super dead.
just like very
paralyzed.
burned.
And we also do get to see, we don't see it happen, but we do see a man with 2 arms, and then screaming noises and growling, and then a man with no arms and Chewbacca holding 2 additional arms.
I like that scene because Han immediately, like, he sees this. He's not terrified that this happened. He just goes, oh, that was the uniform that was going to fit me, but, well.
Yeah, it's fine. Don't worry about it. I did like the ensuing escape on the Falcon as they're loading up, and the whole rebellion is happening around them, and they're not alone in the fight. Like, they might be the only ones with blasters and such, but there are people using guards tools and weapons and mining tools, and droids just running around, and L3 in the middle of the thing just screaming about revolution, and this is where we lose L3.
No, she lives on.
She does live on in a way, but this is where the L3 as we know her is shot. On that subject, we do see how much Lando really cares about L3, because he's willing to risk his life to go out there and get her and bring her back onto the ship. He manages to get like half of her, and then we also see...
I love that he goes out to pick her up. He gets shot in the shoulder. He goes down. Then Chewbacca goes down and picks up Lando, who's still carrying L3, and carries both of them in.
Right.
I think that goes to show how strong a Wookiee can be.
Yeah.
And just also the idea that somebody is cradling somebody that's cradling something. It was just a great visual.
Right. Russian nesting dolls.
Yeah, Russian nesting Lando.
That was a pretty powerful sequence. One of the reasons why I think it happened is the way that they showed L3 shutting down. It really looked like someone who had just suffered massive trauma,
right,
and is dying.
And some of that dialogue that she had there was like somebody was clearly in distress. This is her last moments, but she doesn't know like what to say, because who puts themselves in that situation? Right.
And she's like not entirely there either. Like it feels like she's going through pain,
right,
which is not, I was gonna say it's not something we really see in Star Wars, but there is that scene in Jabba's palace where they turn a droid upside down and burn his feet and it screams, which is kind of
Ian.
Terrifying. You're welcome. But it is not something that we're confronted with a lot of the time, and with a character that had the development that L3 had, it really brought more meaning to that situation. Another scene that I didn't think that I was going to be as impacted by, but now that I think back on it, I was like, wow, that was actually like a really good scene, is when Chewbacca and the younger Wookiee have a conversation in Shuriwook before Chewbacca goes out to help Han and Lando and get L3 back onto the ship. Meta knowledge, I know all those lines were written out. Even though I don't understand what's being said, just the physical actions of them speaking and the movements, the body movements that they're making, and that fact that when he says goodbye, you know, they do the touch heads thing. That helped serve that Chewbacca growth again, that he's like, look, I was willing to leave this guy behind to help my people, and now that I've helped my people, like, he's in distress, and I trust this guy enough that I'm going to go back for him, just like he helped us all get out of here. Mm-hmm. So I liked that additional Wookiee development.
You know, it'd be interesting to find out what the script says that they were saying to each other.
Yeah.
Sure.
It'd be interesting to find out if he knew those Wookiees. You know, Star Wars suffers from small town syndrome, so there's like 90% chance that like that is his wife Mala or his son Lumpy or something like that. Because I believe those two are
my neighbor's nephew.
Now.
I think you're right.
Or just to find out what their plan was. There's a lot of times in this movie where people are stranded somewhere, but they seem to know where to go to find ships, or don't. I don't. It was a lot of just. Kind of just wandering around, and then they're where they need to be on foot.
You just walk until you find a ship. They're everywhere. Dot the landscape.
Yeah, so I think it'd be cool to find out what the Kazans had wrote for them to be, what their conversation was.
For me, I think it's a lot harder to write stuff about like L3 and Chewbacca to have the audience connect to them because of like who they are. It's a droid and a beast. You could connect to Han or Lando or whoever because you're a human, and so it's a little bit easier. And so we see a lot of L3 and we see a lot of Chewie as just like the comedic effect or something like that. But I think these scenes in particular on this planet do a lot to develop them as not just the comedic characters, but as like real serious members of this team, and so you're able to see just a little bit, you know, L3 is super comedic in this, but then she gets her moment at the end in her death scene, and Chewie's comedic in some of the things that happen in this, but then you get to see his conflict when he sees the Wookiee and then come back. So I thought it was really huge for this one in particular, for those two characters to go into a lot more serious things instead of just be the comedic after effect for all of these humans that they're hanging around with.
Yeah, I agree with that, 100%. One last thing before we move scenes. Kira's got a great arm. She comes charging out.
She chucks those things, doesn't she?
Right? She's just like, I know how to deal with these turrets. Just disappears into the Falcon at the end of the whole like conflict. Comes out with like 4 grenades and just starts hucking them point blank, hitting all these things. Turns
Definitely
around to the guys and goes,
point blank.
Sorry,
hucking.
That's not what I meant. But
it's opposite point blank.
Just hucks him
at least second range,
right on target. Yeah, at least 30 feet.
Yeah, at least a -4.
A -4, really. But she, like, I'm looking forward to the Kira cosplayers who will just start popping up and
start throwing stuff at people.
Just start throwing grenades at
That's
people.
Fine.
Does that mean the Han cosplayers are required to throw rocks at windows?
Absolutely.
I would hope so.
And they have to make the clicking noise with their mouth first.
I mean, my mic looks like a rock. I mean, a thermal detonator.
We need those for this. Right? We talked a little bit about the Kessel Run.
Yeah.
But there's still there's one important thing that happens while this is happening. They start making their way off of Kessel. There is an Imperial blockade that starts coming in, and thinking about it now, my first thought was, okay, why does the Empire care? But we know from Rebels, and we know also kind of just from things dotted throughout this movie, that the Empire and the syndicates have some sort of connection. And if one of their biggest illicit drug supplies are being threatened, they'll probably send something to figure out what's going on. In this case, that something was a giant Star Destroyer.
They probably just heard a distress call from a planet and were sending law enforcement to help stabilize the situation.
Propaganda, lies, slander.
Don't believe their lies.
You?
Okay, maybe that. Which then begs the question, John, why did they start immediately shooting at an escaping vessel from the problem?
Escaping or instigating vessel?
They wouldn't know.
They could have gotten communications about a big white and blue ship that was leaving with unrefined coaxium.
Guys, let's talk about the ultimate fate of L3. She
died doing what she loved.
She literally dies in Lando's arms, or shuts down. Han's doing his best to make his way through the maelstrom, but in order to get out of there, they need the navigation charts. Now, it's said the L3 had the best navigation system in the galaxy. Han's idea is to, hey, maybe if we plug her hard drive into the Falcon and upload her, then we'll be able to access those navigation charts and get out of here. And so they do. They upload L3 into the Falcon's computer system where she is absorbed.
So it's not just the hard drive they install, it's her brain. They're not installing just the data, they're installing her personality.
Everything that was L3. Right. What do you guys think of L3's ultimate fate? Becoming one with the Falcon.
I wish we would have gotten more of her, like, sass and dialogue from doing so, but I understand why that's not going to happen. But ultimately, she's part of the ship, and the ship that she helps navigate with Lando, so I think that's a fine.
Well, Mike, they kind of do. In the original trilogy, Han sends 3PO to talk to the Falcon, find out what's going on, and he remarks that the ship is very rude and has a very peculiar dialect. It's kind of like one of those weird, I wonder why he said that, instances that they didn't really need to explain. Now it's kind of a fun fact. They're like, oh.
Yeah, it's one of those weird fan service-esque moments where it's like, oh, let's find out the origin of such and such's, like, left boot. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. For me, this one worked.
That's cool. I didn't remember that moment, so
yeah,
it makes sense.
A couple days after we saw Solo, and we saw it on the 24th, we went to Steel Wars live recording. One of the panelists at his show brought up a really interesting point that in Empire Strikes Back, when they need to figure out a place to escape to after they get out of the asteroid field, they're going through the ship's options of where to go. The best place for them to go is to Lando. So it's kind of like, was it the best option, or was that L3's personality trying to get back to Calrissian? And I thought that was a really interesting.
Yeah, that
maybe like thinking way too much about a point, but it conveniently fits.
Right,
totally
fits the theme.
It's kind of cool to think too that L3 is now also playing a role similar to that of 3PO and R2, where she, as the Millennium Falcon, has bared witness to part of this huge legacy. Mm-hmm. Like she was a part of the original trilogy, and now she's a part of, the sequel trilogy with Chewbacca and Rey and Finn and everybody on board in the Resistance. So it's kind of a neat thing to think about, that like she's still kind of there in a Ghost in the Machine sort of sense.
Mm-hmm. Literally a Ghost in the Machine.
Right.
Assuming droids have souls, which we all know they don't, so no ghosts.
I ain't scared of no digital ghost.
Shouldn't be.
Because they don't have souls.
Right.
And they don't exist.
Yes, they don't exist.
Gotcha.
Nailed it.
I thought just the visuals that we got there was the most impressive to me throughout the rest of the movie. Just the scenes with the giant tentacle monster and what the maw looked like and everything that was kind of being sucked into it. I thought that was visually very impressive.
I enjoyed watching the skin on that thing just get slowly ripped off as it kept getting pulled in.
It was just like this massive skeletal ball just sitting there.
Giant white head just being slowly pulled in as the rest of its skin is being ripped off the back of it.
I find that scenes in films with special effects that have that dirty, gritty, sort of, cloudy sense to them always look really good, because all of that kind of chaos and darkness and shadowy effects and fog and all that really helps to mask any weird standout-ish special effects.
Sure.
Like, semi-recently to last year, I watched the Murder on the Orient Express, and the special effects in that film in certain parts were really noticeable. But I think that was one of the reasons why, is it was like presented so clean and perfect and all that. But I agree with you. It was fun. It was a fun. This whole movie is just fun. I'm going to use the word fun a lot. It's just fun. John, anything to add on the No, you got it with the Monster Ball Skull.
Yeah, Monster Ball Skull, we're good.
Monster Ball Skull.
Oh, I did enjoy as they need to get out, and they have a very limited window. They have their quintessential ticking clock, multiple ticking clocks in this one, where they need to escape through this narrow passage of like giant astral bodies about to collide. And Kira's like, how are we going to get out of here? And it's like, oh, it's going to be like that tunnel back in Corellia. It's like, that didn't work. He's like, oh, probably will. And it worked this time. I like that. Call back to earlier.
This was a really dumb joke, but I did enjoy the part where he's like, I learned this from my buddy, what is it, Needles or something?
Needles.
I learned this from my buddy Needles, the best street racer on the streets of Corellia. He pulled this move, and then he died. But it's gonna work for us, like that.
Doing that move.
Yeah, you're doing that move.
It was one of those, like, I'm beginning to think that I like dumb humor, because, you know, we've heard a lot of people complaining about the Marvel humor that we've been seeing in Star Wars and in Marvel, and I'm just beginning to think that that's just my kind of humor, because I like those kind of dumb jokes and references and things. The Millennium Falcon, at this point, very badly damaged from doing the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs.
Ish.
Now, if you round down, manages to make it to the refinery location on Savarine, which is a planet that
is correct.
This refinery looks like it got blown up, and then somebody's still using what remains. It's not a very nice looking area. None of the locals talk to anybody. They manage to get the hyperfuel on ice and are awaiting the arrival of... They're awaiting Dryden Voss's ship to arrive, and upon waiting, they are ambushed by Emphas Ness and her Cloud Riders. We mentioned in the last podcast how I think we all really liked the train robbery scene and how cool Emphas Nest was, and her character takes an unexpected turn here.
I would have been 100% okay with it if she just never took off the mask. I feel like they took off the mask to do, like, not only is this character a badass, but she's also a girl. But I don't feel like that was warranted. I kind of like the idea that we didn't know who or what she was. The old Weston game Star Wars RPG refers to Tusken Raiders as a man or a vegetable. And I kind of that's what I kind of applied to the character of Enfys Nest. Like, I kind of wish they'd kept it a mystery, or done the small universe thing and made her somebody that Tobias knew. For half of the movie, I was almost sure that it was going to be Kira, until there was a scene where Kira and Enfys Nest are looking at each other. I'm like, okay, that can't be it.
Right.
And when she does the reveal that she's this young woman, she kind of looked like Val and Beckett.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. And I spent the entire time, like, waiting for Beckett to be like, hey, hon, long time no see. And there's parts of the movie that kind of feed into that, where Enfys Nest, in a few minutes from when after she reveals herself, says like something to the effect of, my mother taught me before she died, or before she took off the mask, about some things, and like that could have been a reference to Val sacrificing herself at the beginning. She needed to blow up that bridge for that train to crash, and either one of them to be able to get away. And so she could have been doing it to either save her love interest or save her daughter. There's a part where Enfys Nest warns Tobias to release their cables when they're flying away with the container. Like, release your cables or die. That doesn't sound like something a Marauder like gives you a choice on. So I think there was either a change in the script or a missed opportunity, because I think that would have made her character and Beckett's character even more interesting, that this whole time it's been father versus daughter over these like same jobs.
Okay. I kind of like the whole she's just a random nobody, because I spent the entire movie going, oh, it's Kira. Oh, no, wait, it's Val in disguise. Oh, no, wait, it's their daughter. I kind of like the nobody thing, for the same reason I like the Rey is nobody thing. Mm-hmm. It's just a different person. Like, it's a wide galaxy. People can do stuff. I think that her reasonings for doing what she's doing were perfectly adequate, and that the comment about this hyperfuel starting a rebellion was not necessary. I think that was one of those holdout moments from this idea that all the Star Wars movies need to be connected in some way. And I mean, this movie's already connected because it's Han Solo, you know? I don't think that was really necessary. I would have been fine with her just saying, yeah, we need this fuel because we're fighting against these crime syndicates who are tearing down our families and getting revenge.
That's the impression I got on the second viewing. On the first viewing, I just heard rebellion sort of thing, and I just assumed, like, oh, she's part of some proto-rebellion against the Empire. The second time I watched it, when she gives that terrifying story about what Crimson Dawn has done to that planet.
Yeah, the local
cutting
population.
out people's tongues because they spoke against them. The second time watching it, it kind of felt like she was getting this fuel to go to war against the syndicates more. And I think it was just her saying rebellion at the beginning kind of threw me off, because in Star Wars, when you yell rebellion, it kind of feels like you only mean one thing.
She specifically included the Empire in her speech against the crime syndicates, basically saying that they were in league with each other. For me, the scene where she talks about rebellion on the second viewing felt even more like she was saying, no, this is starting the rebellion that you'll see in Rogue One. It's interesting that you kind of went the other direction on that one. What about you, Mike? What was your thoughts on the Emphas Nest reveal?
I thought it was the beginning of a really muddy final act that we kind of were given at the end of the movie. I mirror a lot of the things that you said. One of the things that I didn't want to see in this movie back, when we talked about it before, was I didn't want a galactic, a big storyline to kind of oversee everything that happened. And once I heard rebellion and empire out of her mouth, it just kind of like turned me off on, what we saw and what everything that was going into it. I wanted a little bit lower of an impact of what they were doing, as opposed to it being the start of the rebellion and these are the resources that they need to get it kickstarted and stuff like that. So
coming out of the reveal, Han talks to Beckett and tells him, like, hey, we can't give this fuel to Voss. And he's like, I can't tell if he agrees. I think he disagrees because he doesn't want to live with the death mark, Tobias, but then just like kind of like agrees to walk away, I guess.
Yeah.
And this kind of like goes back to what I was saying about this missed opportunity to have Enfys Nest and Tobias being related, because there's a scene where when he walks away from this gang that's been plaguing all of his jobs, it seems, he just kind of casually waves at her and she casually waves back and he just walks off.
It's like,
and it gave this very like, they're familiar with each other, but like not in a we've tried to kill each other way, but within like I'll see you at home for dinner.
It kind of de-emphasized everything that you saw in between those two characters beforehand.
Exactly.
Like, like I said earlier, she was the thorn in his side, and he had a reputation of just screwing this guy over and over again. And now they're just, okay, I'm bye. I'll see you next time.
It was a really weird direction choice too. Like, this is super nitpicky, but the way that she waved back at him, like, to me, took badass, awesome Enfys Nest that was trying to kill him the whole time and turned her into kind of like a dorky schoolgirl.
Yeah.
Because she just kind of like goes... People can't see me because this is an audio podcast, but her arm just like goes straight in the air and stiffens, and then she like waves it back and forth.
Yeah.
Like an old-timey schoolgirl wishing her father well when he goes to work the fields. It was very strange.
That whole segment of them ambushing them, just kind of like, hey, we're here, and then her talking to her waving, that whole segment for me almost ruined that character, because she's such a badass throughout the movie. She is a Phantom Menace, so to speak.
Right.
Nice.
Hey.
Thank you. She does regain some of that a little bit later on. Just I feel like there was, in the writing process, maybe they were just like, oh, we're almost at the end, and they kind of, writer's fatigue, and you just kind of forget some things.
You need to tie up a bunch of loose ends, and this is one that
like
needed...
if Tobias just left and there was no interaction between her and Tobias, it wouldn't have bugged me as much, but it made this like fan theory in my head that they knew each other, were related, like even more cemented.
We move on from them being captured to Han formulating a plan that gets like hit in his brain. He's like, we can pay off Dryden Voss and also not give him the fuel. I don't understand how this plan was going to work without him being on the bad side of Dryden.
No, there's no way that it could.
Well, but the way he presents it to Tobias when he's trying to convince him to do it, he's just like, I got a way where we can get Emphas Nest off our back and Dryden Voss off our back. And when the plan's enacted, you're like, you're going to piss off one of these groups. Like, that's not possible.
His plan at that point is already knowing that Tobias is going to betray him. So he's giving him all this information to keep Tobias trusting him that the plan that they're doing is what's going to happen. Yeah. But you're right. Han's plan, no matter what, ends with him and Kira dead or Dryden dead.
Yeah, and I guess it does kind of make sense too, because once that inevitable conflict comes to pass and it's over, he's just like, I'm not scared of these people. Han takes the crates of hyperfuel with a hidden weapon to Dryden. Dryden inspects the fuel. He believes it's fake. Mm-hmm. Sends his private military out to capture Emphas's forces. The reason Dryden believes it's fake is because Tobias has informed him of a plan to trick him, which he believes has happened. What has actually happened is Han is counting on the betrayal and has brought the real hyperfuel. Most of Emphas's forces are in hiding and ambush Dryden's guards after they realize that they've been bamboozled.
Correct.
What follows is Tobias taking out Dryden's guards because he sees an opportunity to take the hyperfuel go. Basically makes Chewie at gunpoint pick up the hyperfuel and leave, which leaves Dryden, Kira, and Han in a room with 2 knives, a blaster, and a sword, and sent to sort things out. Dryden believes Kira is still on his side. Battle ensues. Kira gets the upper hand on Han, and then betrays Dryden and kills him. Is that all my summary of that conflict?
I think you got there.
Okay.
It sparkles with me.
It seems... before we move on to the resolution of that fight sequence, let's talk about the fight sequence a bit. I really enjoyed this close quarters combat where even though Han had the advantage of just having a blaster, he was still on even ground with Dryden Voss.
I don't think he was on even ground, at all.
Dryden was going to kill him.
When it started and he's trying to use this blaster, all this guy's coming at him with brass knuckle vibroblade things. It reminded me a lot of the movie Equilibrium and the gun kata martial art that Christian Bale is using, where you use your gun to, you do martial arts, but you still use your gun. The problem is that it gets into one move and then he immediately loses his gun because he brought a gun to a close quarters knife fight.
Right.
Which, I thought was funny that you think that he's going to get the upper hand and then, he just doesn't have a gun and he doesn't know what to do, so he just dives behind cover.
But I really enjoyed that fight sequence, personally. How about you, Mike? You're giving me a look.
I have strong opinions about this sequence.
Okay, I'm not going to be that guy for once.
I didn't like it at all because it just, from the start, it looked like they were just doing a...
choreographed dance.
Yeah, but it looked like a lightsaber battle to me.
Yeah.
It played out exactly like a lightsaber battle would in between two people, and it just all of the moves just looked exactly like that, and I was ready for, an action sequence at the end of a Star Wars movie that didn't involve lightsabers, and they played it out exactly like they would have if they had those in their hands, but they didn't. So I just kind of, from the start, it just kind of turned me off. Once that blaster got knocked out of his hands, every other movement in that entire scene was like they had lightsabers.
You know what? You've actually succeeded in convincing me a little bit. I'm not saying you've dampened my enthusiasm about the scene at all, but I understand where you're coming from, because as someone who really likes lightsabers and the fights thereof, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
So that's a really interesting point. And I think I'm with you in that at the end of a Han Solo movie, I would have preferred a Han Solo style fight.
Yeah.
Okay.
It really wasn't a Han Solo fight. He was in it for a handful of seconds, and then it was just Kira and Dryden fighting. And, earlier Kira had mentioned that she had learned her martial arts style from Dryden. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of like a showcase of that fighting style. Yeah, I didn't even think about it the way you did. Maybe it's just because I watched so much sci-fi, and half of them end up in weird martial arts battles.
Yeah, it's because hitting people with things up close is cool.
I can see how you can perceive it as a lightsaber battle. Lightsaber battles to me just mean overly choreographed, non-lethal blows that are made to look fantastic and bounce off another person's blade to make a sparky noise, but never really like. For me, the only time that those moves looked fatal, like that they were killing blows, is when Dryden was swiping at the ground at Han as he tried to scuffle away.
So the result of the fight is 1 dead Dryden Voss and 2 standing people in the form of Han and Kira. Han is intent to go after Beckett and retrieve Chewbacca. Kira encourages him to do so. There is some
very strangely delivered dialogue.
There is a dialogue scene that could have been stronger, yes.
Well, for me, like it felt weird, and the more I thought about it, the more it felt like they were paying homage to like a 40s noir type of story.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
It reminded me a lot of the end of Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow. There's these kind of like corny lines that are like said. They're meant to be heartfelt, but they're campy at the same time.
Right.
But just the way that Kira delivered the "When I think of you on your adventures, I smile" thing. But she starts it by just being like, "Hey Han, smile." What? What is this in reference to?
Excuse?
And especially that Alden Ehrenreich turns around with a look of, I don't know what you're saying either. I'm like, I'm with you, Alden. She delivers her line, which is mirroring earlier when they first caught up, that when she thought of Han on these adventures after he was able to get off Corellia, that it made her smile. Ian's smiling awkwardly right now, and I don't know how to deal with it. She tells Han to go get Chewie because he will need him. On second viewing was like, that's her, I've made my decision to leave.
Oh, dude, you're blowing my mind with this right now.
So, this part of the movie, I think they took a little bit from Disney's The Emperor's New Groove.
Yeah, of course. Why wouldn't they draw from that film?
Because Han goes off to capture Tobias, who has a head start and is apparently just wandering down the coast for no reason with Chewie. And Han ends up like in the path of Tobias and Chewie, who is like a mile and a half away and is just already in front of him. And all I can think about is when Kuzco and Pacha get back to the capital city and Gronk and Esma are already there, and they're like, how did you get here before us? And then Gronk pulls down a chart and it's like, by all means, it makes no sense, and like shows a map of them like going all over the place. Like that's all I could think about when he showed up, because he's standing there like he's been there waiting for them.
Yep.
But he just left and they've had like a 20-minute head start. So that was weird to me, but at the same time it harkens back to old like gangster movies, like the good guy's always going to catch up, and their final like standoff.
I rationalized that in my brain as, oh, he probably just took a speeder.
Those things are loud, and I'm sure Beckett would have heard it. That's 0 sense.
But Kira, like you said, she makes her decision to stay behind, and Han thinks she's gonna grab valuables and then follow him, but she ends up taking.
I wish that Han was a little bit smarter, because she's gonna grab she looks at the jewels, hinting at that she's going to take the jewels. They're going to take the jewels so they can go buy a ship. They're on a ship.
Well, they're
no longer has an owner.
I can kind of see why. I think many of the patrons...
think you would want to be traveling around in that ship.
I feel like you could take that ship somewhere and then ditch it, and not just ditch it on a planet that you just wander around in the desert on.
Well, by the way, those gems were like the fakest looking movie jewels.
They were absolutely costume jewels. There's a lot more expensive, there's like a Sith holocron in there. There's like a handful of old lightsabers. There's a set of Old Republic era Mandalorian armor.
There's an entire freaking crystal skull.
Han blasted that into little tiny pieces. Beckett did. There's a fertility idol from Raiders of the Lost Ark in there, and I'm sure that that's a fantastic collector's piece.
Yeah,
that's got to be worth some money.
Somebody will pay.
Some fan will pick it up.
Spielberg wants it back, I bet.
The one piece of jewelry she does grab is the signet ring off of Dryden Voss's finger, and she puts it on a console and calls up the person who Dryden works for. Now, I think this is going to be probably the most talked about and divisive thing that occurs in this movie. She calls up Darth Maul.
Who? You mean Maul?
Who is just Maul at this point.
He's not a Darth.
He is not a Darth. I believe he was credited as Darth.
It was not.
No, it was not. It was just Maul.
Just Maul.
Okay.
Yep. And then Maul voice and Maul body.
Yep, Maul body and Maul voice. Embodied by Ray Park, who played him in the original appearance in The Phantom Menace.
Original prequels.
I said original appearance, not original
You
movies.
were going to, though.
I know, but I saved it, and now you're pointing it out, and I look like a fool.
You have done that yourself.
Hey!
Full circle.
Balance.
And he was voiced by Sam Witwer, who voiced him.
Lieutenant Crashdown in Battlestar Galactica, the 2003 Reimagined series.
If you understand that reference, please leave us a comment.
Or if you don't, either one, just leave us comments.
Yeah, also leave us a comment.
All that. Sam Witwer voiced a number of characters in the Clone Wars and Rebels TV shows, but Maul was his primary character voice, I believe.
Also, Starkiller in Force Unleashed
Yes,
games.
he was also Starkiller in the Force Unleashed game. I was all for the appearance of Darth Maul because I was like, I was not expecting that.
I'm going to get Mike's opinion on this first, because he doesn't know the backstories.
Okay, yeah, let's
Mike,
do that.
how'd you feel about old No Legs showing up?
I
With legs.
I didn't have a problem with it. I didn't really overthink it or really care that. I thought as long as it was just some bad guy on the other end and they established that she has different intentions and just, doing whatever Han wanted to do, I thought that was the important part of it. I didn't really care who was on the other end. It turned out to be Darth Maul, and I don't hate the prequels, so I liked Darth Maul as a character whenever it happened. And I don't have a problem with him showing up again and him being an instigator or whatever it is.
I hope that more people have your opinion on that.
Yeah, I do
I have
too.
a feeling they're not. Yeah. At the time this movie takes place, as far as we know, Maul is unaccounted for. And we know that he has the ability to take over a crime syndicate. It's not unreasonable to think that he just did it again.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because in those parts in the movie that I personally didn't like so much when they were making all those connections between the crime syndicate and the Empire. Like, it's perfectly reasonable to assume that the job Palpatine has for Maul to do is like, hey, here's a sector of the galaxy that I need a pawn to run, and I know you're strong enough to do it, so you go deal with this while I do important stuff over here with Vader.
Well, while Kier's talking to him, he does something that I know you dislike, and then I kind of was able to justify it for you, but we both agree it was dumb.
Right.
So
I'm all about the Force users. I liked Maul's appearance. And it took me a while to come around to the fact that I liked it. Even after seeing it the first time and a full 24 hours later, I was like, I liked it, I think. When Kira's talking to Maul, just being Maul should have been enough. But instead, he feels the need to reach out his hand, get his lightsaber.
Yeah, he's using the one that he uses in Rebels.
Yeah, calls it to his hand, activates it in front of his face, and is just trying to menace Kira, I guess. Again, John, you were able to really kind of explain why it happened, but it was still one of those fanboy. It was a Dr. Evans and Ponda Baba moment.
Mike, what did you think of the lightsaber activation, or did it even register?
I don't even remember it.
Okay, so fair enough.
To be fair, we didn't remember it at first either.
Oh. Yeah, okay. Before I go into my
this
explanation...
was secondhand fandom that happened
No. This is something we realized when we were driving home.
Okay.
When we left the movie and we're walking back to the Scum and Villainy Cantina from the Chinese theater, I look over at Ian and I'm like, Ian, do you realize that this is the first Star Wars movie where a lightsaber wasn't activated? And we had just seen it be activated 10 minutes earlier.
Okay.
And it escaped both of our minds.
See? It
wasn't
mine
until
too.
we were driving home after Steele Saunders' live recording at Scum and Villainy that I was like, wait a minute. Ian, I'm dumb. And then you're like, I'm dumb too, because I agreed with you 100%. So, and then I started thinking, why did they do that? And I think, and again, this is my dumb reasoning, but it makes sense, but it's still dumb. I think they did it because there are a lot of people that didn't watch the Clone Wars and didn't watch Rebels that don't know that Darth Maul's alive. Now, there'll be some people that'll immediately realize, oh, that's Darth Maul. But other people will be like, oh, Darth Maul's dead, so that's not Darth Maul. This guy has robot legs. Darth Maul didn't have robot legs. So I think that him pulling his lightsaber in is that thing that solidifies, no, this is Maul.
Right.
For the general audience. And it's still dumb. it's kind of like hand holding a little bit, I think, but at the same time, whatever. I was sure that character was going to be a character named Prince Caesar or Caesar or
Zizor.
Xizor, I believe his name is, from the old Shadows of the Empire novels. And I remember when Maul pulls his hood off, the dude sitting next to me at the Chinese theater freaked out.
Oh, he was... And he said after, he's like, I'm a huge Maul fan.
Yeah.
I was like, yes,
he does Maul cosplays and all this stuff, and he was beside himself.
A lot of the theater at the Chinese was like, woo, go Maul! Yeah. Maul happens, and we cut over to the speedy confrontation between Han
by
and
no
Beckett.
means this doesn't make any sense to me either.
Yeah. Han is standing in front of Beckett, and Chewie is there, and he's like, hey, what took you so long? Or like, which basically means the same thing. And
whoa, man, that you can't use that language here. It's a kids show. This is a podcast for 12-year-olds.
Sometimes, man, sometimes. And Han's like, I came as fast as I could, buddy. And Beckett starts doing the classic movie trope, I'm gonna learn you your final lesson.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk to you while I pull my gun out.
And Han just blasts him right in the heart.
Yep.
This, again...
One might say Beckett dies first.
See, people keep bringing that up. I didn't connect those two things at all when I was watching this, either time. So Han runs over to Tobias and, grabs his arm and, holds him as he's dying. And there's this really poignant moment, I think, between the two where, even though Han shot him in the chest... Poignant moment between Tobias and Han where Tobias is dying and Han... is not. John. But it was one of those things where it's just like he's dying, and you're still kind of like, Tobias might be redeemable. Like, he was straight up going to kill Han. He said he was going to kill Han, and I just thought that was an interesting way for him to go. What do you guys think?
Classic bad guy mentor, doesn't listen to his own advice, and ends up being killed by the apprentice sort of thing. It was very similar to Sith doctrine, Ian. I think you could agree with this if you think about it.
Yeah, okay. I can see that.
You have Tobias as the master, Han as the apprentice. In my Sith theory, the object of a master, or the mission of a master, is to raise his apprentice to a point where he can eliminate the master, eliminate himself.
Right.
And so Han shooting the master, using the master's advice, rushing over to, comfort his master as he dies, and Tobias not holding it against him, almost saying you did good.
Yeah.
You did what I taught you.
I think he legitimately says, you did good, kid, I would have killed you.
Yeah, he does. And then he also says that he was never going to learn to play that instrument.
Yeah, because something Secord or something.
He's tone deaf.
Mike, how about you?
I don't know. I'm going back to I don't like Han Solo as a character, and
Fair.
This scene was really a good example of why. It's just like the guy shot him, and then you're gonna console him afterwards. It's like he's a good guy in bad guy's clothing. It's just over and over again. It's like he's a walking contradiction, and I don't feel anything for him, and so I don't get the whole 1 second you're killing a guy and the other second you're consoling him as he's dying in your arms. I'm not stoked on that. I get why it would be in the Sith landscape. Well,
and not even in the Sith, but what I said, that it's the classic gangster movie, right?
Master and Apprentice.
Yeah,
which I get it. But this whole scene was just kind of an example of why I'm not stoked on the character, and it just kind of ruined it for me.
That kind of closes off the movie. We have one additional scene that we get. Kira flies away. Han has this conversation with Memphis Nest about, first of all, he gives the stuff back. I was kind of hoping he was just going to abscond with it, because that would bring him a little bit closer to the Han that we see in A New Hope. But he doesn't. He gives it back. She gives him a vial in exchange, which they use in the last scene of the movie. And she offers, he's like, you should join us. We could use a good guy like you. And he's like, nah. Which again, like, I don't know. I wanted more bad Han.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm kind of with you on that level. Like how you felt about the Tobias scene is kind of how I felt about this part. I was just like, all right, guys, like, if you're going to be out for yourself, be out for yourself. Like, at least take half the stuff.
Yeah,
you know?
I think that if he had absconded with more than just one vial, because he says it's like,
he didn't even
like a couple million credits worth of
60 million credits.
Yeah, and he doesn't take any of it for himself.
Yeah, and she gave it to him. It's not like he asked for anything in return. He was going to walk away with nothing, and then she was like, "Oh, here, have this one thing." It's like, okay, smuggler, you did great.
Yeah,
you're about to walk away with nothing after everything that you've been through. Which makes me think that
if Infus Nest was somebody that Tobias knew or something, maybe it would have made more sense. Like,
sure,
he's like, well, make sure that. As he dies, he's like, make sure that
I shot your father, so I'm going to make it up to you by giving you 60 million credits and refined hyperfuel. That's how that works, right? Equivalent exchange?
Yeah.
And the more I think about it, the more I'm like, oh yeah, the third act could have used some help. But the very last scene we get, we go back...
Well, real quick, so Kira, he kills Tobias. He's about to head back, and Kira takes off. The last shot of Kira is her kind of like teary-eyed, like she...
Yeah, they're supposedly both staring at each other, even though one's on a ship.
Across the stars.
Yeah.
This was like a running theme throughout the whole movie, is a character losing something that they loved. Beckett loses...
Val.
Beckett loses Val.
And Rio.
They do a lot of setting up Beckett and Val's relationship, and then like the next scene she's gone.
Yeah, waste of her character.
And then he has to immediately get over that. Lando loses L3 and has to immediately get over that. It's the same thing with Han. Kira takes off, and he has to...
Interesting, too. I think this is the first scene where Han actually allows Chewbacca to comfort him, because we see throughout the film Chewbacca will be like, oh, you found your girlfriend. Oh, she's ignoring you. You okay? And he's like, nah, get off me. It's like, oh, you lost at the gambling game. Are you all right? Stop touching me. This is one of the first times at the end where Chewbacca's just like, dude, that sucks, man. And Han's just like, yeah, man. So that line about Han needing Chewie because she's going to take off. Yeah, that's a lot more poignant now. Good point. 20 minutes ago that I am now connecting the dots to here.
All right, so on to the last scene.
On to the last scene. Lando is hanging out in another random gambling game. This time in a jungle. Han and Chewie show up and immediately are like super aggressive towards him, and
as they should be. Kind of abandon him.
And Lando's just like, "Whoa, hey guys, please don't shoot me." And Han gets him in a hug where he gets into that little arm contraption.
Well, this time he sees that Lando had literally a card up his sleeve.
Right. And so he manages to take the card out from his little sleeve contraption and uses the hyperfuel as a buy-in for the game, tricks Lando into betting his ship again, and wins the Falcon from Lando.
Because Lando no longer has that card up his sleeve.
It's just proof that he didn't need to cheat to win, and that Lando did. Mm-hmm. And that was it.
Everybody was too excited.
No. As I'm not a screenwriter, but I really wish that scene would have just ended with Lando throwing down his cards and then Han just smirking, and then throwing his cards down, but then it cuts to black. Like, you don't see what his cards were. So we don't know if that's when he would have won the Falcon.
I actually, I really like that. Like, that might have been an edit that I would have made, just, like, thinking about the scene.
It would have played better if we knew that there was, like, sequels to this coming out.
Well, it might
or
have played...
even better if we didn't know there's sequels.
Yeah, exactly. Because at that point, you can leave it up to...
and just end on Han smirking.
Right. And we see them fly off. So... That's Solo in a nutshell. Coming back around, you guys, let's get final thoughts on the movie. John, let's start with you.
I'm going to defer to Mike.
Mike, let's start with you.
I accept. It was a fun movie that tore itself apart in Act 3. There were so many different sequences that I just didn't like about the third act and how it wrapped itself up. Enfys Nest was one of them. We talked about that. Kira calls Han Solo the good guy blatantly, and I stopped wanting to be in the theater when she said that. So that I had a problem with that, and then the whole lightsaber battle as well, and then Han telling Beckett that they can't keep the hyperfuel, that he can't give it to Paul Bettany's character. And so all of those things just kind of wrapped around within just like 5 minutes. I'm just like, I want to leave right now. I'm over this. It was so much fun, and now it's just kind of dumping all over itself. And please stop. I think there were some redeeming qualities at the end. I thought that Han shooting Beckett in mid-sentence, I thought was a really good idea.
Yeah.
Without you having that idea that he was actually going to do it, that he just did it.
Yeah.
And
you never see him with his, like, getting ready to aim or do it. It's just mid-sentence.
Boof.
I loved that, and then immediately he went to console him, and I'm like, okay, that's great. He's a good guy again. So, I had strong opinions about Han Solo as a character going into it, and this movie didn't really change anything. It was a fun movie that developed a lot of characters, both new and old, that were a lot of fun to build into. But I didn't like where the story ended up, and it just kind of took away from all of those fun moments that I had before it.
So as a, dare I say, a casual Star Wars fan, you're not like insane like we are.
Right.
How do you feel the standalone films have gone so far with Rogue One? Or like, would you prefer Rogue One or Solo over one or the other? Like,
I loved Rogue One. I thought it was by far a superior movie to what we got in Solo. Again, some of that is just preconceived notions about who Han Solo is, and I wasn't quite excited about a Han Solo story. But I thought there were also there's a lot more depth that we got with Rogue One. There was a lot more kind of serious moments that we got with Rogue One that connected with me a little bit better than we got with Han Solo. So
because of those preconceived notions.
Yeah, for the most part.
Okay. Mm-hmm. John, how about you?
I hate saying that it was fun because
that's what everybody is saying.
Since the movie, like the actual premiere, however many weeks ago, or the red carpet premiere, I should say, all the reviews, non-spoilery reviews have said it was fun. And even in our podcast about what we wanted, I think my thing was I just want this movie to be fun. And now that I'm hearing it nonstop, like my inner punk rocker's taking over, and I'm like, I'm not part of your fun bandwagon, bro. Like I can't say it, but yeah, it was fun, and I did enjoy a lot of it. I'm in a boat. I'm in a small dinghy being tied behind Mike's boat of Han Solo's character in this. I do agree with a lot of points he says about how he didn't want Han Solo to be the good guy and to actually have a character. Like, I didn't even think about that character just going, you're the good guy. It's like someone going up to Luke Skywalker or whatever, like you are the one, like you are the chosen one. Like, okay, we get it. Yeah, and I was hoping that it would end with a more vague Han Solo, and personality wise they did a lot to reinforce that Han Solo is the scoundrel with the heart of gold, even though throughout the movie Han Solo himself is it feels like he's trying to run away from that. He doesn't want to be in the crime, but he wants to be the bad guy.
He kind of does, yeah.
He's trying to run away from Lady Proxima and get their own ship so they can run away and just be whoever. But once he's in the crime scene, he kind of like wants to be as good at it as anyone else and be the...
He straight up says to Kira after she calls him the good guy, "No, I'm not the good guy. I'm not. I'm totally not."
Yeah. And you
totally believed it, by the way.
Yeah, and the way the line is delivered is the way, like, I felt the movie was kind of pushing he's smuggler with the heart of gold thing. He's like, I'm not the bad guy, but like, you don't feel like confidence behind him saying that.
Right.
The only other thing I didn't like was just how they handled Enfys Nest. Like, I love the character. The character is badass at the beginning, and then it just kind of meh in the third act.
They built a great character and then just didn't do enough with her.
Yeah.
In the right ways.
They Boba Fetted her, but then they tried to redeem it with not being what that character was presented with us. It'd be like if Boba Fett showed up in Empire Strikes Back and at the end let Han go. Like who cares about this character that's supposed to be all like hardcore and whatever.
Right.
But overall, it's probably going to be one of the movies like Rogue One where when I'm bored, I will put it on when I need something in the background, that I won't just sit down and have to like analyze everything. I can just put it on and enjoy.
Right. Yeah, I'm if you're in a dinghy tied to Mike's boat, then I'm on a surfboard that is attached to your dinghy, which is being pulled by Mike's boat. I think that there were definitely some points in this movie that could have used a little bit of attention and maybe a little bit more follow through on making it a slightly darker tone when it came to the end with Han. Plugging the rebellion stuff in, having him still be kind of the good guy. Like I said in our pregame thing, one of the most important things for me is that we got hints of Han being the Han we see in A New Hope. And I think they, like, planted those seeds. They didn't do enough with it in this film. Saying that, however, I have a point I want to tap onto that. But overall, I had a lot of fun with the film. I'm willing to see it in theaters again.
4DX.
I'm not doing 4DX. I'm never doing 4DX again. It was a great experiment. But my stomach can't handle it. Like, it's like being on a roller coaster for 2.5 hours.
Oh, it'll be amazing.
Like, I love the idea of 4DX, but the execution makes me uncomfortable. But I enjoyed the film. I recommend it to Star Wars fans. One of the things that I've been hearing is a lot of people who did not like The Last Jedi have been saying... some people I know have been saying that they really liked this movie, even though they weren't fans of The Last Jedi. And there are people out there who are just saying everything that's new in Disney is bad. But I recommend it. If you're on the fence about it, give it a chance, because it has flaws, and we talked about those flaws. But it really is a fun ride. Like, that word keeps coming up. I cannot emphasize enough how enjoyable it was just to sit back and see another dumb space adventure. Like, this was a great summer movie, and I think it's eventually gonna be one of those ones that ends up in the middle of people's lists in terms of in terms of how they rank Star Wars films. I see this one being a solid middle one.
And you got anything else?
I think that's it. I think that I'd like to talk more about, like, the culture and kind of the reactions so far that we've kind of encountered, but we'll save that for another time, I think, gents. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us for another episode of Hoth Topics, a Star Wars podcast.
Hey, Ian, where could they drop us a line?
They can drop us a line via email format.
Dropping the ball on me.
I know.
Let's try that again. Ian, where can our fine friends drop us a line?
Well, they can find us at our website at hothtopicspodcast.com. You can also shoot us an email at hothpod@gmail.com. Tweet at us
at gmail.com.
hothpod@gmail.com. And shoot us a tweet on the Twitters at hothpod. The thing about the Twitter and the Gmail...
They both have the word at in
yeah,
them?
It throws me off every time. Like, if we go back in all these episodes, it's always going to be going at Hothpod. Yeah, I got it right.
Well, yeah, I do the same thing because you want to say you can tweet us out at Hothpod.
Right.
And as much as I love at-ats,
right,
as a general viewers lover, that's the end of that sentence.
Yeah, John just loves
There's
general
no
viewers. Just as Mike's feelings for Solo burn so dimly, John's feelings for Veers
is hope.
Grow the opposite. Hope is like the sun,
right,
which is like John's love for Veers.
Just general Veers.
If you would like to let us know any questions or comments or
compliments,
or not those, or want us to have a question that you'd like us to answer, please, 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 please let us know. We love getting people's feedback, and we would absolutely love to hear from you guys. So, I think that just about does it. I've been Ian.
I'm just realizing that I have no Star Wars media to look forward to for a very long time.
That's John, forgetting that Episode 9 is closer than you think.
Mike's here as well.
Thanks, everybody. We will see you next time. No, we don't need the clapboard.
I don't have my clapboard.
Good. Welcome back.
3, 2, 1.